I don't get why this isn't working. And my favorite way to explain it to them is if selling is just answering the right questions, right? If it's just saying the right words, then coding is just hitting the right keyboard buttons on the keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
And they would always step back and they're like, no, that's not true. Like coding is so much more complex. I'm like, I know. So can go to market, right? It's the same.
Right.
And so don't try to it's not overly complex, but there is an element of if you've never done it before, that's okay. Like you need people like in your corner to bounce ideas off of, right? Those design partners,
Mm.
yes, they're helpful because they give you like tech feedback on like, hey, don't build it this way, or hey, our world sits like this integration is really important, right? Like that feedback is valuable, but also how to interact in the ecosystem. What is the channel ecosystem look like? What about all of these CISO communities and Discord chats? And like that's a big element of early stage kind of traction that those design partners can really like give you insights to.
We are the Keyboard Samurai, podcast about the business of cyber and tech, here to help you or your business improve. Here's your host, Wil Klu. Let's hack into it now. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Another exciting episode. As always, like, subscribe, all that crazy BS. Today, we're joined with Konnor. Konnor, why don't you give us the 30 seconds of who you are and why we care?
Yeah, it's great to meet you. It's I appreciate you having me on. My name is Konnor Andersen. I've been in cybersecurity, always on the vendor side, kind of building different sales and marketing teams for public and private startups. I've bounced back and forth, made my fair share of mistakes, but had a good time along the way. So I'm excited to chat about it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I like the. I've been a CISO, and I was like, why don't you want to be a CISO? And I was like, I don't like doing the day-to-day work, right? I like being on the vendor, the partner, the like helping CISOs,
Yeah.
not being a CISO so much. So the startup side is really super interesting in how I found you, obviously, because we both talk about startup GTM and content, things like that. So the first question is, what is it that startups, what is it they miss about GTM early on?
I think the nuance specifically when you look at cyber startups is they don't really
Mm.
understand how many cybersecurity startups they are. And everyone's like, well, I don't understand why these CISOs won't take 20-minute meetings with me. And I'm like, if you just like do the math of the 4,000 startups, they each take 20 minutes, that's a full-time job. And it's like you said, the CISOs have a day-to-day job. They have stuff that they have to do. And so I think a lot of startups just like misunderstand or don't really realize what that commitment is when they say, hey, can you just jump on the phone for 15 or 20 minutes? And every SDR is asking for that. Every AE is asking for that. Every channel partner is asking for that. And it just is not quite practical in terms of how people can run their business.
Yeah, that's interesting as I advise startups. And it's like, that's all, like we get to that point where you're looking for design partners or you're looking for feedback. And yeah, even then it's like, hey, I know you specifically, like we've talked, we've worked together. I got this girl has made this thing. Can you take a look at it? Right. And even then I know I'm asking for a lot.
Yeah.
So it is tough.
But it is a lot of that like relationship
Mhm.
based, right? Like so much of cyber is reducing risk. Anything that you can do to make it seem less risky, whether that's relationships, whether that's the channel ecosystem, right? If you think about so much of the go-to-market nuances for cyber is because of the element of trust and risk and all that type of stuff, right? It's like we're both fairly active on LinkedIn, but like your average cyber seller is not like your seller that's selling to sales and marketing folks that's all over LinkedIn. And so like the sales process is a little bit different because of the risk, the I would say natural lack of trust, which
Mhm.
is okay, but that is the industry kind of more broadly.
Yeah. Well, so let's dig into that because I think um, like one of the reasons I do what I do is because I realized they don't understand that sales process, right? They're usually
Yeah,
somebody who's very technical and figured out this cool thing that they can do, but they need to figure out how to market it and how
yeah,
to talk to people about it. We always get hey, send me some information and it's all the features. Here's
yep,
all my blinky lights. And I'm like, no, this doesn't tell me why I want it. It doesn't tell me
yeah.
how I sleep better at night, right? Having those conversations instead of the features list, but have the benefits list, and then understanding that you can't just pitch slap. Everybody knows. Although I will say this, if you accept an invite from an account manager or an SDR on LinkedIn, and you get pitch slapped, like, don't be mad. Like, that's their job. And you accepted the invite. You kind of knew it was coming,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
if I accept it, I expect it, but I'll do the research and look to see there. But I say all that because you can't just start asking for something. You have to build that trust. You can't sell without trust and security.
Yeah, and it's tough. Like you said, like most founders either were a CISO themselves or a practitioner themselves, and they're like, "Hey, I had this problem and I was doing my job, and so I'm going to go create a startup to solve it." Right? Total
Yeah.
great like founder market fit. Like I think that's great. Or on the other side, it's like, "Hey, I'm an engineer, I'm a developer, I'm a builder, and I thought this would be a really cool thing to build, and so I built it." TBD on whether that's a great idea, but you did it anyway. And so either one of those are technical people. They've probably never had a quota before. They probably don't really know what the different marketing channels are. And
Mm-hmm.
their logic is like, wait a second, I don't get why this isn't working. And my favorite way to explain it to them is if selling is just answering the right questions, right? If it's just saying the right words, then coding is just hitting the right keyboard buttons on the keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
And they would always step back and they're like, no, that's not true. Like coding is so much more complex. I'm like, I know. So can go to market, right? It's the same.
Right.
And so don't try to it's not overly complex. But there is an element of if you've never done it before, that's okay. Like you need people like in your corner to bounce ideas off of, right? Those design partners,
Mm.
yes, they're helpful because they give you like tech feedback on like, hey, don't build it this way, or hey, our world sits like this integration is really important, right? Like that feedback is valuable, but also how to interact in the ecosystem. What is the channel ecosystem look like? What about all of these CISO communities and Discord chats? And like that's a big element of early stage kind of traction that those design partners can really like give you insights to.
Yeah, I've seen some people lately and talked to some other startups too that are they're getting in Slack groups now and Discord channels, and those communities are really growing. That's a unique perspective for me, because it's like, LinkedIn's one thing, but your clients may be in Reddit, they may be in Discord, they may be on YouTube, they may be on Facebook. Like, you have to know where they're at and where they're active, and that's like finding that's tough. Like, how do you figure that? Like, how do you figure out where your ICP is?
You talk to them. I think I think that's the dumb easy answer, right?
Danny would love
But I
that
think it's
answer.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Danny's big on that.
Yes.
But I think it comes back to like some people try to like overly complicate it, right? At the end of the day, yes, you're selling security technologies, but you're still selling to people. So figure out what those people are doing when they're not working 80 hours a week, right? They're doing
Mhm.
something, right? You mentioned Reddit, which is like this like black box of a social media platform, but like a lot of the technical audience is there.
Yeah.
But you want to get really banned from Reddit really fast, go to the Reddit, the cybersecurity thing, and start pitching your startup and watch how fast they come for you. Right? It's the
Yeah.
fastest way to get yourself kind of like blacklisted from all things Reddit. And so like there is a nuance of like how do I participate in the ecosystem broadly so that when people are in need of a solution, they come to me. I think that's one of the nuances when you look at cyber startups is you're usually super niche. At least the good ones
Mhm.
are. Early on, you're solving a very specific problem that probably 99% of the market doesn't have today.
Mhm.
And so you need to go find that small percentage that has your problem today. And you can't just say, oh, we're selling cloud security. Way too broad. Way too broad. That doesn't help. No, that doesn't, I don't know how to help you.
Right.
But like as you narrow in, that makes like finding people that actually have your problem a little bit harder. So you need to be a part of the ecosystem because you don't know what local event or what VAR happy hour or what kind of like Reddit board discussion is going to
Mhm.
be about your topic that you could actually find, even if it's just like you just sharing your 2 cents on like, hey, we always talk about this problem. Here are some of the options people think, and that might include your product, that might not. Sometimes I think you get the most respect as a cyber seller when you tell people like, hey, I can't help you today. You actually need this product, and like that's not what we
Mhm.
do today. That's okay. I'm just not for you right now.
Yeah.
And I think you gain a lot of like respect that way.
I've always taken that approach working on the GTM side of things, that like you absolutely should, as a regardless startup consultant, advisor, whatever, if it's not in your wheelhouse, like I have a, I don't know what you call it, I have a plethora of people, companies, whatever, that I know, hey, when this problem comes up, here's 3 people I know you can talk to, because I don't do that, or here's 4 people
Yeah.
because we don't do this thing, right? And you absolutely should, because that does build trust. I mean, yeah, clients ideally would like, to go to as few places as possible, but also you want to be able to provide something good. And on that point, early on, whatever you build, I always say, MVP, get it into client hands as fast as possible, because they're going to change it. They're gonna
Yeah,
you're like,
exactly.
I got this problem and I created it, the solution for it, and then I gave it to this client or these people over here, and they were like, do it this way, and now it's a whole different product, right?
Yep. Yeah. I also think there's an element of like the channel used to have very specific like lanes. Like you had your VARs and then you had your
Mm-hmm.
managed service providers and then you had your integration partners. But like as those VARs try to grow their business, even those lines are blurring. But I think it's still important to know, hey, here's who I go to for these things, and here's who I want to have come to me for these specific things. Because there's nothing worse than as an early stage startup getting a great company to come to you for the wrong thing, because like they completely derail everything. You might have 15 customers and then you get this one Fortune 500 customer that comes and pulls you completely off path. Then your 15 customers are going to get completely ignored because you're now just building for a customer of one. I went to an interesting um there's a roundtable discussion with some of the like federal agencies. So I was in San Francisco a little while ago, and some of the cyber venture community came together, and they were like, "Hey, here's how you sell to the federal government and the three-letter agencies and all these types of things." And I remember like the CIO of one of the three-letter agencies was there speaking, and he's like, "The hardest part is we want you to be building for a customer of one."
Mm-hmm.
And we had this big long conversation about like how it's very at ends with like what we're trying to do in the startup community, which is built for lots of people, and they want us to basically build for one customer. And it's like, well, you want us to build for that one customer before we even have the revenue of that one customer. Like, how do you balance that? Because there's the old adage in cyber of when the government win the category, back when that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
um and so it's nuanced of like you want to build for your customer, but you want to build for the same types of customers, and understand that might not be for everybody.
Yeah, I have a very strong opinions about federal versus private versus like public sector. In that, if you're going to do federal work, then you do federal work, and that's it. Like
Yeah,
that, like don't bother trying to do commercial work and federal. It's way too different.
it's very different.
You're going to, if you try to put all your commercial customers into some federal box, they won't be happy because they're not going to get the functionality they want. Like even if you look at like GCC High today, it doesn't function nearly the same as like regular Azure, right? So
No. Yeah, it's a different animal, it's a different beast. And to be honest, most startups aren't there yet, right?
yeah, no.
It's
Well,
it's the same thing.
I do know some that have started in that, like, hey, we're
Sure.
going to build something for the defense industrial base or for the federal government, and that's again very smart. But well, here's it. I've got a question for you because like I look at GTM from that perspective as, um, and everywhere I've worked has had at least some good SLED local government stuff involved, and it's like you don't really market to them. Like you don't like the way that you market and you do your sort of demand generation and brand awareness and all this stuff out to the public is very very different than how you would build relationships and sell inside of public sector, because it's all just about people at that point, because there's no, I mean, yeah, sure, there might be on LinkedIn and Reddit and you can find out where they're at, but like their world's very different too.
Yeah, and usually they have some nuances, right? Even if you look at just like the licensing structure, it's like, okay, well,
Mm,
how do you do faculty and staff for students? Right? It's like, are you going to charge per user for all of the students? Like, I don't think so.
right.
And then it's kind of like, well, you've got tons of BYOD. Like, there's a bunch of nuances that come with that kind of example. And so I agree. It's the reason why, like, once you get to any decent size, they kind of split that off into its own separate vertical. It's got its own price book. It's got its own
Mm-hmm.
go-to-market structure. It's got its own everything. Reporting is just a little bit different because they understand it's nuanced.
Yeah.
Um, and so startups, usually that's why I think startups don't go that direction. They're like, hey, we'll get there.
Yeah.
But until we're at 50, 100 million, it doesn't really make sense to verticalize that off yet.
And most of
But
the time, if they're making a product, they're going to be resold through a VAR anyway. One of
yeah.
the big four VARs is going to be already into all this. They're already in all the state governments, stuff like that. So it's just, which is
Yeah.
interesting because now you have to partner. I have to look at that channel, right?
Mhm.
Something I've always seen, like I want to say fail, people struggle with is understanding that different channels require different enablement and different go-to-market strategies. You can't just be like, here's our go-to-market strategy, run with it. VAR versus
Yeah.
reseller.
Well, and sometimes you get a 2 million ARR startup that tries to take a few $100 million a year VAR and say, hey, do it this way. And they're like, sorry, we have this whole process. Like, you can fit into us. We're not going to fit into
Yeah.
you. Eventually, you'll become CrowdStrikes and Palo, and you can kind of dictate how they run your business, but you're not yet. And so you do kind of need to fit into their model and motion. And I think it's tough, right? The same thing that startups don't really understand about CISO's calendars. It's the
Mhm.
same thing they don't really understand about how the VAR ecosystem works. I remember I left Proofpoint to go to Darktrace, and Proofpoint has one of the best channels in cyber. Like their channel ecosystem, they've invested in it well. They treat the channel partners well. Like they do a really good job there. And I went over to Darktrace to build out their email product. And I was just like, hey, technically product on product. Like I felt like we would win a lot of our kind of competitive POCs. Like everything was great. So I go to the channel partners that I have relationships with and I'm like, hey, you should sell us, not sell Proofpoint. And then like I remember I was sitting down with someone fairly high up at Optiv at the time. And he's like, okay, let's play this out for me. He's like, let's say we have an incredible year of Darktrace's email product. Like how much do you think we could do? And I was like, I was like, I'll shoot really high. I bet we could do 50 million in year one. And they're like, wow, that's incredible. Do you really? And I was like, well, sure. Yeah. Like we're going to have to get a lot of things right, but I think we could do 50 million. And they're like, okay, cool. They're like, we do about $200 million worth of proof point every year. And so they're like, you're asking me for best case, I get 50. Maybe I don't get 50, but best case, I get 50 or an almost guaranteed 200 million that we've done for the last 5 or 10 years. And they're like, hey, it's not a tech decision. This is a business decision.
Mm.
And like, we can't risk this relationship for this new startup. And I think a lot of startups come in and do that. They're like, hey,
Oh,
we do cloud security and we do it way better than Palo. Okay, cool. But you don't realize they do hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of Palo, and they could maybe do 5 or 10 million with your startup. And that would let you raise your next round of funding. You'd be incredible. You would be the next hot thing. But you realize they got to risk this Palo relationship.
yeah.
And so I think people don't really realize that niche aspect of go to market as well. It's like the channel is a big deal here.
I've
Yeah.
seen that. I've had that conversation specifically. I remember somebody telling me their DLP product was better than Microsoft's, and I was like, okay, so if
Yeah.
somebody's all in on the Microsoft stack and they're worried about Azure consumption and they got E5 licensing everywhere,
Yeah.
and you're going to bring in something that does these three things better and is going to not be as interoperable as the stuff that's already there. Why? Like again, the whole idea of like it's a business decision. So I've
Yeah.
definitely had that conversation with founders too, where it's like, okay, what business problem do you solve? That's always the first question I ask. What business
Yeah.
problem do you solve? And I'm like, all right, now who's actually going to buy this? Like, who do you have to, like you said, they're very niche sometimes. So you may be selling something that helps a detection engineer or a threat hunter, which is great for their jobs. But if you can't bubble that up to at least a stock manager, director, and their VP or whoever that's going to write the check, they don't care, right?
Yeah. And it's like I think that's Microsoft is one of those like unspoken things in cyber that it's like
I mean,
everyone's
they are
biggest
the largest
competitors.
security
Yeah.
company on the planet. People don't realize that.
Everybody's biggest competitor is Microsoft, but nobody talks about it that way. And I'm like, oh, you don't realize like the default is I'm going to use E3 or E5. Like
Mhm.
that's probably the direction they're going. It'll be interesting to see if GCP changes with the Wiz acquisition and see if they become a bigger player or a more of a default. That'll be fascinating to see.
I
But
got to
yeah,
ask about that because everything that I've seen when Google buys a security company, they don't ever do anything with it. Like they bought Mandiant, okay, and like GCP was, and believe I'm not super technical, but like in the Azure world and in the AWS world, you can kind of just live in it. Like they have firewalls and IDEA. Like you don't have to buy something, but in GCP, it's
sure.
still just like, hey, you can spin up a server.
Yeah, GCP's it's always been the distant third.
Yeah.
And it's been a distant third. But it'll be interesting to see. It'll be very interesting to see, right? Maybe Gemini helps them have the comeback, right? And they can combine that, right? Like I've no idea. I think
Yeah.
things can change, but it will be very interesting. It's a big bet with Wiz, right? $30 billion, like that's a big bet. And so you'd think that they've got a few tricks planned up their sleeve. But we'll see. We'll see. It'll be very interesting. And also, like you got to get the security ecosystem on board, right? I don't know how many channel partners are deep with selling GCP as opposed to the Microsoft suite or
The
even
ones that I've
AWS.
known, like that's what they do and nothing. Like there's very much a specialization in the Google Cloud and what's the because they do have a SIM tool. I forget.
Chronicle.
Yeah, like that. Like the people in that world are in that world, and it's kind of it's very different. Where it's very common for most businesses to like be half Azure and
Yeah.
AWS back and forth.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Oh, that's crazy. So going back to the VAR thing and the channels, what was, I forgot what I was going to say now. Because I've worked for a couple of VARs in the past, and yeah. Oh, you were talking about getting their time, like a CISO. Yeah, you have to realize that the people that are selling your product in a VAR, they're selling storage 1 minute, laptops the next, cloud storage, and then backup and DR and vuln scans and whatever. So like, you can't really enable them the same way. You can't give them all the information and have them do the pitch. It's got to be quick.
Yeah, and what I've always told like founders or kind of early stage kind of like GTM folks is like they don't work for you.
Yeah.
And like they will put that relationship over any vendor any day of the week. Because like you said, today they're selling storage, and then they're selling disaster recovery, and then they're selling different pen testing services. Like the offering that they sell is going to change every quarter, every year. But over the years and over the decades, that relationship stays. And so they're like, hey, I'm not going to risk. I don't care if you give me 20 points or 30 points of margin or 40 points of margin. Like that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that this customer stays and this relationship stays because I'm going to have them for the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years.
Right.
And so they're not going to risk it specifically on an unproven vendor, right? Like it's one thing if they bring your tool in and it doesn't solve the problem that the CISO is wanting it to solve. I think they're okay. They're like, hey, this does something, but this doesn't do what I want it to do. It's another thing if they get in there, it's like, hey, it just doesn't work. And so there is kind of a nuance of like, go to the channel when you feel like you're ready, technically ready. But at the same time, if your product can't win and it can't perform, you don't want to like test out your tech bugs with a VAR in the room. Like you don't want that. You'd rather fail in private in that regards.
That's smart. It's something I hadn't thought about. I think I would have come to me, but I think, faced with that situation, I'd be like, let's make sure everything works before you go and take it to, insert. They're all 3-letter acronyms too, for the most part.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, oh, this is awesome. Well, hey, Konnor, this has been great, dude. Where can people find you on the interwebs if they want to?
I'm on LinkedIn fairly often. Konnor Andersen. I spell my name kind of funky. Konnor with a K, Andersen with an EN. But you can find me on there. I'm fairly active. And then I recently started a Substack called Cyber Building Blocks to just write a little bit longer about some of the stuff I've been trialing out in the cybersecurity go-to-market side. So either one of those two places is great.
Outstanding, man. We'll have to swap newsletters.
Yeah, let's do it.
Dude. This is great.
Awesome. Thanks, all.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. Follow Wil and the podcast on LinkedIn /Wil Klu. Visit Wil Klu ME for information on services he offers to help your cyber or tech business grow. Until next time, Synaculator.